Ready?
All right. Welcome to the latest Watercolors Aquarium Gallery video, brought to you from the basement of the Watercolors Aquarium Gallery. We're down here in the basement because it's time to show off our freshwater quarantine system. There it is. That's it. We're going to show off a little bit about what we do, why we do it, how the system is set up, and why the system is set up that way. What do you guys think? You ready for a tour?
Oh yeah.
Bye. This is the center aisle of the quarantine system here in the gallery, and it's all set up with 20 long glass aquariums with sponge filters in them. Sponge filters is such an easy, basic way to filter an aquarium. It's easy to clean, and we can run it off of one air system. So if we show the camera up here, you can see this big, huge tube. That's the air distribution system for the entire basement, including all of the quarantine systems. So this giant thing that kind of sounds like a jet engine when you're down in the basement, this is the blower. It's a regenerative blower that runs all of the air system in the entire basement. It's designed on a loop system through all of this 1.5-inch PVC plumbing. This is the intake that pulls the air in and sends it through the system here. We've got a blow-off valve because this thing is so powerful that even with the 100 or so tanks that we're running down here, this thing puts out enough air to filter all of them with a little blow-off happening along with it.
So if you're familiar with our saltwater quarantine system, one of the biggest differences in this section that you'll see is that all of these are separated tanks. This lets us deal with 1 or 2 species at a time and treat them for whatever their particular needs are, rather than trying to treat a full system or having fish cross-contaminate each other. So every shipment that we get in gets treated with Prozzy Pro as a default. Worms are pretty much the one thing that we can't detect just outright on the skin right away, so it's easy enough for us to just deworm them and call that a good preventative measure. Then we observe them for the 2 weeks for any other signs of disease. We make notes on our tanks if there's anything that we all need to be aware of. And then a lot of these become our special orders, so anything that needs to be held, we mark down too, so hopefully we don't sell it before the person who really wants it gets it. If anything needs to be medicated specially, we keep track of that separately and do that on an individual basis. For example, this tank came in with ick, so we're treating them with Paragard and Metroplex, which is a good, really easy on the fish combination that we can use for that. And we treat each one of these tanks as individual systems where we can monitor and medicate as we see fit.
So we do a 2-week quarantine on all freshwater fish, and observationally we can see things within 2 weeks that you would take longer in saltwater, but also the way that we preemptively treat in saltwater necessitates that extra time. The nice thing about freshwater fish is that the sourcing we can get them from allows us to be a lot more picky. Like, there's more options out there for freshwater wholesalers than there are saltwater wholesalers in the world, and that pickiness allows us to get better quality fish just off the bat, and that observational period gives us the time we need to make sure that they're eating properly, behaving normally, and don't show symptoms of anything. So that 2-week period is a sort of a test. If they can't pass all 3 tests, they stay down here until they can. So that 2-week period functions as a conditioning period in addition to that test. So for example, both of these tanks are great examples of what I'm talking about here. So this tank has discus and this tank has rummy nose tetras. These are both fish that can be a little sensitive to shipping stress. So the time that they spend down here gives us time to make sure that they're eating nice and heartily and have put on weight and are ready for the next stage of getting a permanent home. So when it comes to feeding, the baseline food for almost all the fish down here is either a good community flake or bug bites, and usually alternating between both. Just because they're stressed and you want to fatten them up, another thing we try to do on at least every other day, but usually daily, is they're also getting frozen food. So they usually get the dry food in the morning and then the frozen food sometime in the afternoon. And we cycle between Daphnia, brine shrimp, and bloodworms, depending on what we're feeding and what it is and what size their mouth is.
All right. So the other thing that happens down in the basement here in the freshwater area is the trade-in area, and the cichlid area.
Yeah, even trade-ins that we get from local breeders or, rescues like these common plecos here, they still get quarantined down here for at least 2 weeks, so we can make sure that they're healthy and make sure that they're ready to go home. A lot of the times we're just taking dumps from people who maybe don't need their fish tank anymore, and a lot of times those come in with ick, they need to be healed up, then we can get them back out to new homes.
Or plecos that come in because people don't realize just how big a pleco is actually going to get in their aquarium. We do take those. They're right here. So on this side is the cichlid section, and we of course have to make that distinction when we're talking about cichlids, the most diverse group of fish on the planet. These were specifically referring to the African cichlids, and really it's the Rift Lake cichlids, Lake Malawi and Lake Tanganyika. Those all come in and go into this system here, which is set up on a pretty cool automatic water changing system.
Maybe we go over to the barrel?
Yeah. So we use a tremendous amount of salt water here in the gallery, and salt water is only ever mixed with water that first goes through a reverse osmosis deionization process. That process is very inefficient. It produces a lot of what's called RO wastewater. RO wastewater is city tap water that's got lots of the minerals kind of concentrated in it, which is perfect for African cichlids. So that wastewater first goes into this barrel here, and then twice a day a pump fills each of these tanks with about a gallon or two of water into an overflow system that flows it down the drain. So this automatic water changing system gives each cube about a gallon or two water change every single day, with water that was just going to go down the drain anyway. Well, hopefully that gives you a good idea of just what happens down in the catacombs of the gallery. All of this is to ensure, well, ensure is a big word. All of this is to do whatever we can to make sure that by the time you take a fish home, it is as healthy as possible.
Yeah, we should probably talk about doing a podcast episode on our freshwater quarantine. We have done one on saltwater, but maybe it would be a good idea. Either way, check out the Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast wherever you listen. Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, find us on TikTok, and be sure to like and subscribe to these videos.
And as always, let's have lots of fun and keep those hands wet.